Great to have you with us. More than half, this is an extraordinary figure, and it's changed quite dramatically in the last few years. More than half of all New Zealanders over the age of 15 are living in a rented house right now. And there is no surprise that with house prices and rates, bloody rates rising, that number is going to continue. All right, so whether you are a tenant or a landlord, there are a few people who know all of their rights, very few. Consumer New Zealand CEO Sue Chetwin joins me now from Wellington. So Sue, how many people do really know their rights, do you think?
Look, I don't think people will know all of their rights. They will know that they've got some rights. And I think the tenancy legislation that we have now came from the mid-1980s, 1986. And I think it came in then basically to protect flatters and people that were being exploited by landlords. So hence you have bonds being held by an independent body and that independent body ruling over disputes. But of course the landscape, as you've just said, has changed rather dramatically since then, and tenants are a whole new and different bunch of people now. They're not just young students or people setting out.
Because people
they can
now,
be anybody.
and people are now making the decision, the life choice for one reason or another, that they will be permanent renters. That they, as is the case in many countries, they will be renting their entire life.
Yeah, that's right. And like in New Zealand, it was always you got your own home and then you were getting apartments, and now you're renting those apartments. And I think the situation with landlords has changed as well. With so many people now investing in property, it's your mums and dads who might actually be your landlord now, not, as it might have been in the 80s, somebody who was less likely to be as responsible to their tenants. So the whole scene has completely changed.
Let's talk about, if we talk, obviously we haven't got the time now to go through all the rules and regulations, and there are many of them, and the rights on both sides, what the landlord must and must not do and what the tenant must and must not do. But would you say, knowing these backwards as you do, that the landlord has more rights than the tenant, or the tenant has more rights than the landlord?
Look, I actually think that the rules aren't too bad in terms of your rights once you're in the property, but it's actually the length and what you do to end the tenancy that may not have stood the test of time that well. So, if we're going to have long-term tenants, then pretty much the maximum any landlord is going to look at is a year. So it may be of some benefit to landlords to be able to have longer tenancies, but then, if they want to get tenants out, it's more tricky for them. So I think that's an area that needs to be looked at. Because,
of course, what we know is there are a lot of landlords that are almost accidental landlords in New Zealand because they're really there for the capital gain, ultimately, than they are for the rental income and managing a rental property.
Yeah, that's right. Property investment has become the thing that New Zealanders do. And yeah, exactly. They're looking at the capital gain. So, they might sell the property underneath a tenant. So I think that's where, that's where the rules need to be changed. And the government has said, yes, they recognise that the landscape for renting has now changed and that they are going to have a look at the rules.
One of the things that interests me is that property management companies are beginning to take hold. There are more and more of them all the time. And with more people renting, there's more need for them. But there is really no regulation around property management companies at all, is there? There's no way, if you've all of a sudden become a landlord and you decide to go to a property management company, whether you can judge whether they're a good company or not.
Yeah, that's right. And also, not much protection in terms of your funds. So, both from the tenant's perspective and the landlord's perspective, we have argued, and it certainly was put to the Minister at the time, that the Real Estate Agents Authority should probably look after that area. It is, I wouldn't say it's a cowboy because there are some responsible property management companies, but as you say, it's very hard to judge. And they should actually be regulated because they are more and more looking after people's properties. And if you're paying your rent to these people, you've got no idea where that rent is actually going, how
secure
safe
the money
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Sue, thank you so much for joining us. Sue Chetwin, Chief Executive, Consumer New Zealand. That is an extraordinary figure, isn't it? Just over 50% of New Zealanders over the age of 15 are living in rented accommodation. It's 10 minutes.